I married a stranger by mistake. The first time I saw the man who would become my husband, he was standing under a broken hotel sign in the pouring rain, holding a bouquet of white roses that clearly wasn't meant for me. I should have known something was wrong. My name is Emma Carter, and until that weekend, I had never done anything impulsive in my life. I planned my meals every Sunday, arrived 15 minutes early to every appointment, and kept 3 separate calendars to make sure nothing surprised me. Then my best friend, Sophie, invited me to her destination wedding in a small coastal town called Willow Bay. "You need a break," she told me. 3 days by the ocean, free food, dancing, and absolutely no work emails. I agreed because she had been my best friend since college, and because she threatened to drag me there herself if I refused. The wedding was supposed to take place at the Grand Willow Hotel, an old building overlooking the sea. It was beautiful in photographs, with white balconies, tall windows, and gardens filled with roses. In reality, the hotel was crowded, disorganized, and hosting 2 weddings on the same weekend. That was where everything went wrong. I arrived late on Friday evening after my train was delayed. Rain poured from the sky as I ran toward the hotel entrance, dragging my suitcase behind me. That was when I noticed him. He was tall, dark-haired, and completely soaked. He held a bouquet of white roses in one hand and stared at his phone with the expression of a man whose entire life had just fallen apart. "Are you here for the wedding?" he asked as I passed him. "Yes," I said breathlessly. His shoulders relaxed. "Thank goodness. I thought I was at the wrong hotel." "You might be," I replied. "Apparently, there are 2 weddings here." He looked at the roses, then back at me. That would explain a lot. Before I could answer, Sophie rushed through the hotel doors. "Emma. You're finally here." She hugged me, grabbed my suitcase, and pulled me inside. I looked back once. The stranger was still standing beneath the broken sign, watching us disappear into the lobby. His name, I later learned, was Daniel Reed. At least, that was the name he gave me. The following morning was chaos. Sophie's makeup artist was late. One bridesmaid had lost her shoes. The florist had delivered red roses instead of white, and the wedding planner kept confusing Sophie's ceremony with the other wedding taking place in the hotel's eastern garden. I spent most of the morning solving problems. At noon, Sophie asked me to deliver a sealed envelope to the hotel manager. "It contains the final ceremony documents," she said. "Please make sure he gets them." I hurried downstairs, but the lobby was packed. Guests from both weddings moved in every direction. Staff carried flowers, chairs, and trays of champagne. Near the reception desk, I saw Daniel again. This time, he was wearing a dark suit. "You survived the rain," I said. "Barely." He smiled. "You're with the Carter wedding, right?" I nodded. "I'm supposed to deliver this to the manager." "So am I." He held up another sealed envelope identical to mine. Before either of us could say more, a hotel employee rushed over. "You 2 are needed immediately." "For what?" I asked. "The ceremony rehearsal." "But the rehearsal was yesterday." The employee looked confused, checked a clipboard, and then said, "Mr. and Miss Carter?" "I'm Emma Carter," I replied. Daniel hesitated. "I was told to report here." The employee sighed with relief. "Perfect. Follow me." We should have stopped him. We should have asked more questions. Instead, we followed him through a side hallway into a small private room decorated with white flowers and candles. A man wearing a black robe stood near the window. 2 witnesses waited beside him. Soft music played through hidden speakers. I stared around the room. "This doesn't look like a rehearsal." Daniel leaned closer. I was about to say the same thing. The hotel employee handed our envelopes to the officiant. The officiant opened them, glanced at the papers inside, and smiled. "Everything appears to be in order." "What exactly is happening?" I asked. A private civil ceremony, he replied. As requested. Daniel and I looked at each other. There's been a mistake, he said. At that exact moment, the lights flickered. The hotel employee rushed out to check the power. The officiant, apparently believing we were nervous, gave us an understanding smile. It's perfectly natural to feel overwhelmed. We're not overwhelmed, I said. We don't know each other. One of the witnesses laughed. Cold feet. Happens all the time. Daniel shook his head. No, she means we literally met yesterday. The officiant looked down at the documents again. Emma Carter and Daniel Reed? Yes, Daniel answered cautiously. And these are your signatures? I looked at the page. My signature was there. I suddenly remembered signing several documents that morning after the wedding planner shoved them into my hands. I had assumed they were hotel forms. Daniel's face went pale. I signed something at reception too. The officiant smiled again. Then we may proceed. We may not, I said firmly. But before we could leave, Sophie burst into the room. There you are, she cried. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. She froze when she saw the officiant. Then she saw the documents. Then she looked at Daniel. Emma, she whispered, what did you do? Nothing. The officiant finally seemed to understand that something was seriously wrong. He examined the paperwork more carefully. The envelopes had been switched. The documents intended for another couple, another Emma Carter and Daniel Reed, had somehow been signed by us and delivered to the wrong ceremony room. It's fine, Sophie said quickly. Nothing official happened. The officiant's expression changed. That may not be entirely true. Everyone fell silent. He explained that because the forms had already been signed, witnessed, and officially filed electronically, the ceremony itself was mostly a confirmation. According to the system, Daniel and I were legally married. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my mind refused to accept it. That's impossible. I'm afraid it isn't, the officiant replied. Daniel sat down slowly. Sophie looked like she might faint. I stared at the stranger I had met in the rain less than 24 hours earlier. My husband. The hotel manager arrived and apologized repeatedly. He promised to contact a lawyer and have the marriage annulled as soon as possible. It should be simple, he assured us. A clerical error. It was not simple. The paperwork had been processed under our real names. Our signatures were genuine. The other couple had disappeared after a family argument and could not immediately be found. The lawyer told us the annulment might take several weeks. Until then, he said, legally, you are married. Daniel and I met in the hotel cafe that evening. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, he said, I feel like I should apologize. For marrying me? For not being the correct Daniel Reed. Despite everything, I laughed. He smiled. That was the first moment I noticed how kind his eyes were. We agreed to cooperate with the lawyers and avoid making the situation more complicated. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to contact each other only when necessary. But life had other plans. The following week, Daniel called me because the lawyer needed us to appear together at the courthouse. Afterward, we got coffee. The next appointment ended with lunch. Then there was a meeting with the hotel's insurance company, followed by dinner because we were both hungry. Slowly, the stranger stopped feeling like a stranger. Daniel was an architect who restored old buildings. He loved terrible jokes, black coffee, and walking along the beach during storms. He had been at the hotel because his younger brother was supposed to marry the other Emma Carter. The white roses had been for the bride. The wedding had collapsed before it began because the couple realized they were making a mistake. Maybe the hotel was determined to marry someone that weekend, Daniel joked. I tried not to smile. Weeks passed. The annulment papers were prepared, but every time we were supposed to sign them, something delayed the process. At first, it was missing documentation. Then the court appointment was moved. Then Daniel had to travel for work. Somewhere during those delays, we began seeing each other even when there were no legal meetings. He helped me assemble a bookshelf in my apartment. I attended the opening of a building he had restored. We cooked dinner together and burned everything because neither of us knew how to follow a recipe. I told myself we were only friends. Then one night, 3 months after the hotel mistake, Daniel stood outside my apartment holding a bouquet of white roses. "This time," he said, "they're definitely for you." My heart began to race. He stepped inside but remained near the door. "The lawyer called," he said. "The annulment has been approved. We only need to sign the final documents tomorrow." Oh. It was what we had wanted. It was what we had been waiting for. So why did it feel like terrible news? Daniel looked down at the flowers. "I've spent weeks trying to fix the biggest mistake of my life." I swallowed. "And now you can." He raised his eyes to mine. "That's the problem." Neither of us moved. "I don't think marrying you was the mistake," he continued. "The mistake was believing I would be relieved when it ended." I could barely breathe. He stepped closer. "I know we met because of confusion, switched documents, and the most incompetent hotel staff in history. But everything after that was real." I felt tears fill my eyes. "Daniel, I'm not asking you to stay married because of a legal accident," he said. "I'm asking whether you would choose me now, knowing exactly who I am." For most of my life, I had been afraid of surprises. I believed happiness came from careful planning and safe decisions. But the best thing that had ever happened to me began with a mistake. I took the annulment papers from the table, tore them in half, and let the pieces fall to the floor. Daniel stared at me. Was that a yes? That was a yes. He kissed me before I could say anything else. 6 months later, we returned to the Grand Willow Hotel. The manager offered us a free ceremony to make up for what had happened. This time, there was only one wedding scheduled. Every document was checked repeatedly, and Sophie personally guarded the envelopes. I walked down the aisle carrying white roses. Daniel waited for me beneath an arch overlooking the ocean. When the officiant asked whether I took Daniel to be my husband, I smiled. "I already did," I said. "But this time, it isn't a mistake." Everyone laughed. Daniel held my hand.